I opened by asking, how the hell are you? And I put the emphasis on hell because that's kind of what we're going to be talking about today.
Yeah, that's very true. I'll say this. Hell is one of those topics that still to this day hits near and dear. Every once in a great while, I even still have nightmares about hell, and I'm sure we'll get into that later. But as mentioned, I'll just so we don't spoil anything for later. Yeah, it's still something that I still to this day still feel as a presence in my life.
Well, that is definitely going to be relevant to this show because tonight we are talking all about hell, both conceptually and specifically as it relates to Christianity. And we're going to talk about some different interpretations of hell and discuss various hell concepts contained within the Bible. Sheol, Hades, Tartarus, Gehenna, outer darkness, lake of fire, and many, many more. There's all kinds of hells in the Bible, right? So to help us discuss the topic with some incredulity, we have none other than BittyBuddha. Biddy, welcome to Secular Soapbox.
Thanks for having me.
You are a deconverted theist and a TikToker who also happens to be a regular content contributor and co-host over on Tang, the Atheist Network group. So we are well acquainted with each other.
We are, yes.
This is your first time over on PSF, I believe, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, it is.
It is. So welcome aboard. Welcome to the PSF side. And we are, we touch on religion frequently, but we kind of step away from religion a lot. But when we get back to religious topics, we like to have religious experts like yourself. And,
I appreciate that title. I don't know if I qualify, but
I consider you an expert just on your familiarity with, biblical scripture. And I think you have an expertise in the Old Testament in particular, do you not?
Yeah, I'm probably more familiar with that. I have forgotten a lot. And because when I deconverted, my brain just hit Control-Alt-Delete on everything. And
Right.
So then now I'm realizing, you know what? I shouldn't have done that. So...
Well, let's talk about that for a minute. Before we get into the topic, let's introduce the PSF audience to you and find out, who you are and how you get into this. So you mentioned deconverting. What did you deconvert from and what did you deconvert to? I'll put it broadly that way and let you answer any way you want.
Deconvert to. So I was raised in a non-denominational, evangelical. I kind of don't really know the difference between the two. Household, so I was raised in this, and then I rebelled quite a bit, became a tattoo artist for a while, and then had what I quote unquote is this God experience, and I swung full into Pentecostalism. That's a word, and was doing healing conferences and exorcisms. And then I started to read my Bible and realize, okay, maybe what I'm learning isn't biblically accurate, where I swung the other direction into Messianic Judaism, which is where I learned a lot about the Bible.
So you went from fundamentalist evangelical to Pentecostal.
I was a fundy the whole...
I would say is still fundamentalist.
Yeah.
And then to Messianic Judaism, which is probably still fundamental. So all of those are kind of fundamentalist.
Yep. Biblical literalists. Yep.
Right. Okay. Sorry. Okay, go on.
Yeah. And my husband was an atheist the entire time, and he started to ask questions about evolution, which I wasn't allowed to learn. And I started thinking, yeah, this makes a lot of sense, which then I adopted it as basically fact. But then I started to see the Bible just starts to unravel from there, the Noah and the flood story. And then it just kind of domino affected.
Yeah. That's usually what my go-to is for people, for evolution deniers. There's a couple of different areas, when you're talking to theists and they're, challenging what I call reality, but science, if they are evolution deniers, then the story to go to is Noah's Ark, because that is not reconcilable with evolution in any way, shape, or form. So you pretty much have to throw that story out of the Bible or have some sort of radical reinterpretation of it to allow for the evidence of evolution. But okay, so you became unconvinced once you started digging into the Bible a little bit more and comparing it to science and realized that this just doesn't seem to add up.
Yeah, well, like contrasting it with reality, basically. So then you start to learn, okay, well, Noah's flood didn't happen, and Moses most likely wasn't a person. The Hebrews were never enslaved by the Egyptians, and you're just like, oh my God. Like, there's just so much to it that you are kind of sheltered from ever learning. Like, I was not allowed to ask questions, and I was not allowed to get secular answers or listen to secular positions. And it came from listening to a lot of debates between atheists and theists that I was like, that side is making a lot more sense. So I did, like, I say this all the time, but if you're familiar with Rene Descartes and his rotten apple analogy, that's what I did. I just threw out my basket of apples and only put back what was true. And I ended up an atheist.
Not to get too far off topic, but what about the? You said you'd learned about like the healing ministry, or what was that? Can you elaborate on that a little bit more? Because I'm mainly interested in. Were you say that when it came to things like evolution and so forth, that clearly debunks the Bible, but when it comes to things like healing, was it quite as obvious to you? Was that another factor?
There wasn't a consistency in the promises that the Bible allocates to prayer or your actions or promises and all these things. And so, like, in that healing atmosphere that I was, you'd be lying if you didn't admit to, you sort of exaggerate the stories whenever you encounter someone. Like, oh, we were on the street and this happened, and usually it's kind of all bullshit. But you know it, but you're still trying to really hold on to it.
I would imagine that the healing thing takes longer because it's more difficult to debunk. It's less falsifiable in that, you, depending on your interpretation of the Bible, you can say, well, God's working on his own timeline, or you didn't like pray hard enough, or you didn't, whatever.
Yeah, I never liked that. It didn't make any sense to me. I think that's why I kind of dove into the Bible. It was my husband showing me, and I need to look up the name because I tell this story all the time. But when I got heavily involved in that movement, he was showing me somebody on YouTube that was like a magician, and how he would do street healings, like right there on the strip in Las Vegas. And these people, through power of suggestion, were like, oh my God, yeah, my leg grew out an inch. And I was like, wait, what? And, like, hold on. And I just felt betrayed. I felt like I had been fooled. And so I wanted biblical accuracy. I didn't want to feel stupid again and that I was taken advantage of and manipulated to believe that these stories or these events were like really happening. And yeah, so swung the other direction.
Fake magic is real, but real magic is fake.
Right.
Wow. So how did you become interested in this particular topic? Because we're going to get into hell today. We're going to get way the hell into hell. And, but this is something that you have some sort of interest in. It sounds like Caleb does too, to some extent, and we'll get to that. But,
yes. So I was raised on the hell doctrine, which was terrifying, and also the rapture doctrine, which is also terrifying. And so learning the Bible and Judaism and, all of the actual Hebrew, I didn't believe in the hell doctrine. I had deconstructed that while I was still a believer. So then leaving the faith wasn't scary by any means. I wasn't concerned about that because it isn't supported in scripture. It's definitely extra.
And you learned this in your Messianic Jewish biblical deconstruction because Jews don't really have the same conception of hell as Christians do.
They don't have hell at all.
Right. So, so that's interesting that applies to the Messianic Jews as well.